Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Secretary of State for Transport, Anne-Marie Trevelyan.
Conference, thank you. It's wonderful to be back here with so many of you in Birmingham this year, speaking to you today from the heart of the West Midlands. It serves as a powerful reminder that this region was the crucible from which much of the modern world was built, as the Mayor, Andy Street, is tireless in saying as he promotes this wonderful region. The infrastructure that powered that growth can still be seen today, and we are now giving it a new 21st century boost. Less than a mile away from here, I visited Curzon Street, one of the first train stations built in the UK. It has facilitated passengers and freight for over 100 years. Designed by Robert Stevenson, one of Newcastle's finest exports, providing designs and inspiration for constructions across the world. It took 20,000 workers nearly 5 years to build. Today, 27,000 workers have spades in the ground, with so many of them working to reopen and transform. These will serve at the heart of our newest high-speed railway, delivering additional capacity for our network, drawing in huge investment into the region, and of course, therefore helping the whole country and our economy to grow. From land to sea, the UK also has a historic leadership in underwriting prosperity and trade. Shipping continues to drive the global economy today, just as it has done for millennia. Our seas are by far the most important arteries for global trade, carrying over 95% of all goods. But while our maritime industry normally conducts its business beyond the public gaze, recent events have thrust global supply chains right into the spotlight, and in particular, the importance of resilient and secure shipping routes. At Transport, we are charged with ensuring the security of all networks that moves goods, people, and information around the world, and that underpin our way of life and our economy. We have seen Putin weaponize food by trying to crush the economic and humanitarian criticality of Ukraine's agricultural economy. In blockading those Ukrainian ports, Putin has prevented the export of global grain supplies. So our maxim is to ensure the UK is and remains the most secure and reliable nation to trade with globally. Because at a time when Russian aggression is disrupting those established trade routes, it has never been more important for the international community to come together and protect global shipping. So we will work with all our partners to ensure maritime trade and travel continues to operate safely, securely, and sustainably right around the world. Now, conference, there is an elephant in the room today. We cannot ignore that 9 out of 10 train services were at a standstill last Saturday, with further strikes planned tomorrow and this coming Saturday. While our priority, our overwhelming objective, is to grow our economy and tackle the rising cost of living, we also have to deal with rolling strike action. Strikes disrupt everyday life for everyone and slow down our prospects for growth. The more quickly we can resolve these disputes, the sooner all our efforts can be spent on getting our economy motoring at full speed. Despite soaring international energy prices, the war in Ukraine, and the continued global impact of COVID, we must, of course, take that necessary action to help our families and our businesses. We can only do this through growth and having the infrastructure that makes this possible. We want to transform the rail industry to make it sustainable for the next 100 years. So the very last thing that the country needs right now is more damaging industrial disputes. My message to the trade union membership is simple. Please take your seats at the negotiating table and let's find a landing zone which we can all work with. Punishing passengers and inflicting damage on our economy by striking is not the answer. As a former trade secretary, I know something about making deals. And I can tell you there is a deal to be done between the unions and our train operators. It's a deal that will require compromise. So I want to see positive proposals to bridge those differences. As part of these, I am asking industry to launch consultations on reforming our ticket office provision across the country. The way we buy everything, from groceries to holidays, has transformed over the last decade. Online shopping is increasingly the norm, and all our favourite retail stores are using the latest self-service tech, making the in-store experience quicker and smoother, with fewer queues and more convenience. And we are seeing the same trend on the railways, with a huge increase in online ticket sales. Today, only 12% of transactions take place at ticket offices. So we need to be looking at ways to move with the trend and support our customers in the most effective way possible. There will be some stations where the ticket office will be important to the running of the station. In other areas, rail employees may be better in front of the glass, helping passengers in other ways. This is not about cutting jobs. This is about putting the passenger at the heart of the railway. We all want the same outcome, to modernise the railway so that customers can choose rail as their preferred travel method with confidence and with ease. So I hope that union leaders, together with employers, will work with us to deliver the much needed changes and resolution so that together we can grow the economy for everyone. Conference, just as coal power and steam propulsion powered a global revolution in growth and development, which transformed everything from medicines to transport and brought prosperity across the world, we are at the tipping point of another revolution that has the potential to transform. The way that all our modes of transport are powered is changing at pace. Hydrogen fuels, net zero emission vehicles, sustainable aviation fuels, green shipping corridors. Those markets that change first and have the potential to grow fastest will go the furthest. We want UK business to lead the way on this new clean growth revolution. So that's why we're investing record amounts in our roads, in our railways, and in future green transport solutions to provide the conditions that will make sure business can grow on the back of clean transport. Building the vital connections that will open up access to jobs, education, and housing across the whole of the United Kingdom. This government is unashamedly going for growth. Growth is key to delivering jobs, higher wages, and more money to invest in our world-class public services. And a key part of achieving that growth is keeping our promises and delivering for the people. Speaking as the Member of Parliament who has campaigned for dualling the A1, a road investment first promised in 1992, and I was elected on that promise, delivering on our promises is firmly on my mind. The A1 is just one example. The A303 is another. One of the main gateways to the southwest, it acts as a bottleneck to growth. So we are committed to getting these road solutions delivered. Delivery is the key, something my fantastic ministerial team are all focused on. Kevin Foster is taking on the challenge of modernising our railways. Catherine Fletcher will deliver the roads the Prime Minister has asked me to accelerate, which the Chancellor announced in his growth plan. Baroness Veer will work to decarbonise the aviation industry. And Lucy Fraser will be working on the future of transport, making it fit for a modern world. And our Parliamentary Private Secretaries Marco Longhi, Auntie Brown and Damien Moore in the Whip's office are going to help us to stay on track. As a rural constituency MP, do you know, one of the most common issues that gets raised with me is the state of my local roads. Indeed, I became very popular overnight with many colleagues when I was given this new posting because I think we all have constituents raising similar issues with all of us. That's why we have set aside a pothole fund to repair 10 million potholes a year. So, motorway or local street? This is a government which will invest so that our country can grow. We are a team that is determined to get spades into the ground at pace. Conference, we've got a lot to do. It's time to get Britain moving. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care and Deputy Prime Minister, Therese Coffey.
Thank you, Conference. I'm delighted to be here in Birmingham for my first speech as Secretary of State for Health and Social Care and as Deputy Prime Minister. I was here just a couple of months ago for the Commonwealth Games, and I was absolutely blown away by the Games themselves and also how this city has been transformed since we were last here. And that is thanks to Conservative Mayor Andy Street. Andy has shown that being ambitious for the people and communities he represents, getting on with the job at hand and focusing on delivery is exactly what our voters want and why he was re-elected resoundingly. Conference, as a Conservative government, we believe in the great British people and we are ambitious for our country. Despite severe challenges facing the global economy, in the wake of Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine and the aftershock of COVID, now is the time we must come together to tackle the issues that we have long faced. And we will take decisive action to get Britain moving again. From getting Britain building, to channeling investment into local areas, to helping families get on in life. We will deliver, deliver, deliver. Conference, our National Health Service has the admiration and gratitude of the British people, particularly for getting us through COVID. The doctors, the nurses, the midwives, the paramedics, the chemists, the cleaners, and all the clinical and support staff, as well as the carers working in care homes or in our communities. They regularly go the extra mile. They are the pride of Britain. The NHS is and always has been a national endeavour. That was set out in 1944 when it was a Conservative politician, Sir Henry Willink, who put forward the proposals for a National Health Service. That's right, a Conservative MP from my home city of Liverpool who conceived the NHS. A good omen, I think. And I continue to be proud of the many doctors, nurses and dentists serving as Conservatives in Parliament, far more than we see in the Labour Party. And it is because of our Conservative Party's commitment to the NHS that we will be spending £173 billion this year on health and social care in England alone, up from £124 billion when we entered office in 2010. This has resulted in more doctors and nurses than ever before. But as Health Secretary, it's my job to be honest and to level with you about the scale of challenge ahead of us. And frankly, I won't be turning to Labour for solutions. If you want to see the Labour Party running the NHS, just look across the border into Wales, where around 60,000 patients are still waiting for more than 2 years for treatment, higher than last year. This isn't the time for brickbats, though. It is precisely because healthcare matters so much that we need to have an honest discussion and be prepared to hold the NHS to account, forging a partnership with them focused on delivery, not dogma. So let's be honest. While most patients receiving care in our NHS have a good experience, too many do not. Whether it's the 8 a.m. scramble to see a GP, or the long waits to get tests or treatment, or the struggle to see an NHS dentist at all. Much of this has been made worse by the pandemic, and I must level with you, backlogs are expected to rise before they fall, as more patients come forward for diagnosis and treatment. But this isn't just about COVID. There is still too much variation in patient experience. I saw that for myself this July when I went to A&E. I waited nearly 9 hours to see a doctor before being asked to return the next day for treatment. Now, I knew from previous experience that would be too late. So I took myself to a different hospital and was treated that same day. That is the sort of variation we see across the NHS, from 2 hospitals just a couple of miles apart, and it must change. That is why my first job in the department was creating our plan for patients, which puts the needs of patients front and centre. Our new plan for patients deliberately places an emphasis on primary care, the gateway to the NHS for most people. It empowers doctors and nurses by reducing bureaucracy, which gets in the way of them doing their jobs. And it seeks to improve performance across the country by unlocking data. Now, you may have heard A, B, C, D are my immediate priorities. And no conference, I wasn't broadcasting my A-level results to the nation. Nor was I reciting a new hip-hop beat by Dr. Dre. Those 4 letters represent my commitment to focus resolutely on the issues that affect patients most. Ambulances, backlogs, care, doctors and dentists. And with my excellent ministerial team, Robert Jenrick, Will Quince, Neil O'Brien, Nick Markham, and our very own in-house ministerial medic, Dr. Caroline Johnson, together we will focus on the issues that affect patients most to deliver their priorities and be their champion. Starting with A for ambulances. Access to urgent treatment can be life-saving. When people phone 999 because they think they or their loved one is having a heart attack or stroke, they want to know help will come and will come soon. Let's be clear, average waiting times are too long. So we are increasing the number of 999 call handlers, and we must also get ambulances back on the road from handovers at hospitals. So we are placing a laser-like focus on our most challenged trusts, because as we saw last winter, nearly half of all handover delays were in just 15 trusts. We also know to be able to admit more patients, we need to open up more space in hospitals. So we are acting immediately to create more capacity, the equivalent of 7,000 more beds this winter. But it's not just capacity in our hospitals we need, it's also in our communities to help support people who could be cared for more appropriately at home or in a care home, rather than being kept in hospital unnecessarily. That is why the C for care is such an integral part of our plan, and why we have invested a further £500 million this winter so local councils and the local NHS can work together to tackle delayed discharges. It isn't all about emergency care, though. It is also about diagnosis and treatment, and that is where we go back to B for backlogs. The waiting list for planned care, made worse by the pandemic, currently stands at about 7 million. This includes people waiting for diagnosis to know if they need any treatment at all. While in England we have now virtually eliminated waits of over 2 years, we are speeding up our plans to roll out community diagnostic centres as well as new hospitals. And we will maximise the use of the independent sector too when patients are waiting too long for treatment. Lastly, but key, is D for doctors and for dentists. Now, I think it is perfectly reasonable when people need to see a GP, they should expect to do so within a fortnight. Of course, I would like to be more ambitious, and while I will not be prescriptive on how GPs interact with their patients, I am clear. Patients must be able to see their doctors promptly. Now, to help achieve these priorities, I will publish a lot more information for patients so they can see how their local NHS is performing, including their GP practice, and on access to NHS care and treatment. Another key element is personnel. I've listened to why people say they are leaving the NHS or what is holding them back from offering more services. And I am responding. I'm empowering GPs to use their funding more flexibly for the recruitment of more support staff and making significant changes to pension arrangements. I'm extending the emergency clinical register so that health professionals who have come out of retirement can continue to practice for a further 2 years. I'm opening up more prescription capability and services to pharmacists. I'm investing in IT for telephony and digital appointments. And I'm making it easier for clinicians registered outside England to be accredited to get to work more quickly treating patients. It is frankly bonkers that we have restrictions on the recognition of doctors, dentists and nurses within the UK itself. That is why I'm laying regulations next week, which will allow the General Dental Council to get on with accrediting dentists to work right across our United Kingdom, so we can have oases of oral care rather than dental deserts. This is all on top of our existing commitments to boost the health and care workforce, including our manifesto pledge to recruit 50,000 more nurses by 2024. Conference. Whether you live in a city or a town, in the countryside or on the coast, this Conservative government will always be on your side when you need care the most. Conference, this is just the start of our ambitions for health and care. Our plan informs patients and empowers them to live healthier lives because we know prevention is better than cure. It is right we continue our longer-term health approach, strengthening mental well-being and resilience, as well as the physical health of our nation, because that is also good for the economic health of the nation. We have a record number of people in work on the payroll, but there are many vacancies still to be filled. We know work is good for you, both physically and for mental well-being, as well as putting more pounds in your pocket. That is why I will strive to support those not working now due to ill health, to help them to start, stay and succeed in work, building on the Prime Minister's pledge to have more mental health support in communities. Because together we can deliver a healthier, more productive society, all the stronger to help grow our economy. As the Prime Minister said on the steps of Downing Street, she has 3 clear priorities: growing the economy, tackling energy security and costs for households and businesses, and the NHS. When I first went into the department, I asked what was the biggest risk, what the biggest risk was this winter, and what we could do to help. I was told, help with energy bills, so older people would not worry about the cost of turning on the heating, and for health and care providers too. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor listened. They acted. They have delivered. And we need to act on growing the economy too. We need a strong economy to have a strong NHS. We need a resilient, sustainable economy to have a resilient, sustainable NHS. And we need a compassionate and considered Conservative government to deliver, deliver, deliver. And Together Conference, that is exactly what we will do. Thank you very much. Thank you.
A very good afternoon conference. How are we feeling today? Oh, come on, that was rubbish. How are we feeling today? We're enthused, we're excited. That's what I like to hear. Well, thank you for joining us for this very exciting Levelling Up panel. As the newly appointed Levelling Up Minister, this isn't just something that I am passionate about. This is something that UK government is very passionate about, with levelling up absolutely at its heart. I would never have taken on this job if I didn't think that that was the case, because levelling up is about making sure that we are spreading opportunities right across this country, so that whether you're from Bishop Auckland or whether you're from Brecon and Radnorshire, you have the best opportunities to get on in life. And I'm delighted today to be joined by a wonderful panel of excellent guests, including the Secretary of State for Scotland, Alistair Jack. Give him a hand. The MP for Brecon and Radnorshire and PPS to the Deputy Prime Minister, Faye Jones. And Scotland Office Minister, Malcolm Offords. So, Alistair, start us off. What are your thoughts on levelling up and devolution?
Well, as you said in your introduction, it's a UK-wide mission. It's incredibly important that as Boris Johnson used to say, you know, opportunity was not equally spread across the United Kingdom, but talent was. That's what we know, and that's what we have to address. And in Scotland, we're very fortunate that with a mixture of project funding, we've got £2 billion of funding currently committed to Scotland. And, you know, we're all about delivering for local communities, delivering on their priorities, creating jobs, improving the economy. We leave the SNP to be obsessed with separation, with breaking up. They're on a sole mission. They're failing on public services, and we see that in Scotland on education, on health, on drug deaths, on many things. Our focus is very much that the UK government is present in Scotland and is delivering for people at a local level, and that is levelling up.
Absolutely. Faye?
Well, I think we've seen a bit of a journey on both the UK government and the Welsh government working together over the last years. We've seen the best and the worst. I think during the peak of the COVID pandemic, when you really saw political gamesmanship from Mark Drakeford and I think backed up by counterparts in Scotland as well. That was really not what we want to see. At the end of the day, Alistair is absolutely right. Delivery is what our constituents right across the country are concerned with. They don't care who's delivering for them. They want to see a measured standard of improvement in their lives. And I think now we are actually in a good place. We finally got the Welsh Government to come on board with the levelling up agenda, and we can see they are starting to put their gamesmanship behind them. So I think that's really positive. And for someone who represents a constituency which has 65 miles of a border with England, we look over the hedge and can see things are working better in England. And I really want us to embrace that agenda in Wales. And fingers crossed, in a couple of years' time, when we've got an opportunity to have a Conservative government in Wales, and we'll have two Conservative governments at either end of the M4 really working for Wales, I think that's when we'll see real change.
I know you guys are all going to be out there, aren't you, delivering those leaflets and knocking on doors in Wales to make sure that that happens. Malcolm, your thoughts?
I think from a Scottish point of view, this is one of the most important initiatives the UK government have put forward, and it's fundamentally going to strengthen the union. Because what we're saying here is that we want, as I said before, opportunity has not been shared throughout the UK, but talent is everywhere. And in Scotland, there's been a narrative pushed by the Scottish National Party that Scotland was treated badly and differently by the UK, and in fact, quite the opposite. But this is an initiative that shows us that we are the same opportunity being given to all regions of England has also been given to Scotland. And what we discovered is of the 32 local authorities in Scotland, many of whom are not run by Conservative majorities, 30 of those councils are bidding for levelling up. Many of them are SNP-controlled councils, and they're saying to us, you know what, we haven't seen anyone from the UK very much for the last 20 years, and you're in town, you've got good ideas, you've got money, we want more rather than less engagement from the UK government. So it's been a brilliant initiative for us.
Brilliant. Well, on this snazzy new policy we have, Alistair, on investment zones, but also on Freeports, tell us about those. Tell us about the potential they have for delivering in Scotland.
Well, again, it's about Scotland's two governments working together, and on Freeports, we're a bit behind the curve. I was very fortunate earlier in the summer to go and visit Ben Houchen's Teesside, Teesworth's Freeport, which was inspirational, and he already had let 50-acre sites to people. I think on the 7th of July, they were cutting the first turf for Sears, but more than that, there was a 1,045-metre deep water quay going in. And you will know all these things from being from that part, but it was so impressive to see, but for me also depressing that they had such a head start, because we had spent the thick end of 18 months negotiating with the Scottish Government to agree a Freeport strategy for Scotland. We've now got there. We have 5 bids from Orkney, Peterhead and Aberdeen, the Clyde, the Forth, and Inverness and Cromarty. And we're now at a position where we're ready to announce, we've decided the winners, if you like. We've agreed it with the Scottish Government. We're ready to announce those winners, and we'll be doing that imminently. But I want also to offer those 5 areas in investment zone status, which will give them other advantages to go alongside. And actually, I wouldn't be upset if, for instance, Stranraer and Cairn Ryan, who pulled out of their Freeport bid, that's I declare an interest here, that's at the west end of my constituency. But that's where the sailings are to Larne and Belfast. And I would love it if, with Larne and Belfast, they became an investment zone. That'd be a great sort of union message. We like that. And it would bring, hopefully, more investment and more levelling up. So I say this in advance because we now have to work with the Scottish Government, because part of the IZ offering is in the devolved space. So we now have to work with the Scottish Government to get to the place where we can take the investment zone offering out into and have bidding and people bidding for it. And as I say, the 5 bidders for Freeports would be a very good start, but there will be other areas that want to bid. And I think it will be very important for the levelling up agenda. I think it will make a huge, huge difference, because it's not just the tax breaks, it's the inward investment that will follow that will create better quality jobs and improve people's livelihoods.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Malcolm, you and I were up in Orkney last week talking to people as part of the Islands Forum, and it struck me that there was an awful lot of positivity around growth deals.
Yes. We were there actually to talk mostly about energy, but we asked the delegates from all the islands in the UK what was their major concern with the change of government, and their response was, is levelling up still going to happen? And it was a tremendously positive environment. In fact, I saw you you were having selfies with a whole number of SNP councillors on the Levelling Up agenda. And I think what's coming through here is that this is actually real devolution. This is not central government coming to communities and telling them what's good for them. This is us going to local communities and saying, what do you want in your community? If you take my community in Inverclyde, which is considered one of the most deprived areas in Scotland, the local people have decided the projects they want to back. And when the council, the chief executive of the council said to me that when they went out for engagement with the community, they got the greatest response on levelling up in anything they've done in 20 years. And that's supposedly within a deprived area, which actually is saying they want the tools to improve their lives. They're aspirational, just like the rest of us. And we're in a position now, by allowing the local people to select their own projects, to empower them to improve their own communities. And surely that is what the basic value of being a Conservative is.
And Faye, we need to talk about Wales. Always. So you were elected back in 2019, so we're still quite new, slightly less fresh face than I think either of us would like to be at the moment. How have you found the relationship between UK government and Welsh government?
Well, I think it certainly has improved over the last 3 years. You know, we have a constructive dialogue now. I'm really pleased at last they've come on board with the idea of a Freeport, and that bidding process is currently underway. And with any luck, we will have at least one Freeport in Wales, hopefully announced in the spring. And levelling up as well, I think the great benefit of levelling up is actually that we are working directly with local authorities in Wales, which is absolutely fantastic. My local authority, Powys, is one of the largest areas in Wales, but yet we never received any European Union funding. And isn't this the great benefit of Brexit, that we are actually able to take our money and put it directly into community projects? And as Malcolm correctly says, this is from the ground right up. This is bottom-led. So I think, not only is the relationship between the UK government and the Welsh government so much stronger now, despite the occasional hiccup, they're not, really fully engaged with the idea of economic prosperity and more jobs and a better standard of living. But, the UK government is dragging them along. We are in a much better place now, and, I really am seeing the benefit. For the first time, my constituency got funding, and we got £7 million, which is probably not very much, but in my part of Powys, that is going to make a huge difference. We're going to be able to add better facilities to Theatr Brycheiniog in Brecon. We're going to be able to build on some brownfield sites in Llandrindod Wells. These are tired towns that need love and need to come back into use, because I know that Wales is the best part of the United Kingdom, but I'm pretty confident. This is not the time. This really isn't the time to start this argument. Yes, sorry, union, yes, that's it. No, but parts of Wales do need a bit more love. And, we live in a very rural part of the country, which can look quite beautiful, but we mustn't forget rural problems and rural deprivation. So I'm really, really glad that the UK government has got this laser-like focus on driving up communities right across the country.
Brilliant. And Alistair, we've talked about the relationship between the Welsh Assembly and the UK government. What about Scotland, with those quite intense political differences at times?
Yeah, I'm not going to soft soap this. It's very difficult. I mean, I get up every day, as does Malcolm, as does the entire Scotland office, and we go to work to strengthen the United Kingdom. Okay, let's be clear about that. The Scottish government get up and go to work every day to break up the United Kingdom. I mean, that's how it is. They want to separate. I think we all know separation is painful. It's not where we are. We believe in strengthening the United Kingdom. And we've had a breakthrough on Freeports after a very long negotiation. I hope we'll get one in investment zones, but we also want to, for instance, Sir Peter Hendy did a very good union connectivity review, and there's a lot of good that can be done out of that. We want to work with the Scottish Government to deliver on that. We want to deliver small nuclear reactors that help power the grid, bring down energy costs. They're totally against nuclear. It's not the old nuclear power stations. These small nuclear reactors do a job for the grid, and the idea that everything can be delivered from renewables is not realistic, because it doesn't matter how much offshore wind you have in the North Sea. If it's a cold night in December and the wind isn't blowing, they ain't generating any power. So you do have other things for the base load grid, whether people like to hear it or not. The base load for the grid needs other forms of support. So there's that. And there are a number of other initiatives that we want to work with them on. We think all of these things will either bring down the cost of living to people, and a good example of that would be gene editing. So at the moment we have a gene editing bill going through Westminster, It is not genetic modification. That was a complete misunderstanding with the Scottish Government Minister at the beginning. We've made this very clear. Gene editing is what happens naturally, but you're just speeding it up. Farmers have been doing it for centuries. But actually, when you're facing issues around climate, adverse weather, whether it's problems applying pesticides and other issues that farmers face, gene editing can help you with that, and it can make your crops less expensive to produce, which brings down the cost of food, and it can obviously enhance the yields as well. And we want the Scottish Government to get on board with that. At the moment, they're resisting it because they're tracking EU rules and regulations. That, to us, is a mistake. And actually, the National Farmers Union of Scotland and many others, the James Hutton Institute, who are the world leaders on gene editing and based in Dundee, they want the Scottish Government to get on board. So again, it's this constantly working with them, but trying to persuade them to come on board, because these things are devolved. We have to respect that. But equally, gene editing can make a massive difference to the price of food in the shops and to the productivity of farmers. And our farmers want to be as competitive as English farmers, and we've got to back them on that.
Well, Faye, I see you nodding along there. You have a huge farming community.
Yes. Brecon and Radnorshire is beef and sheep farming country, and equally we have the same blockage in the Welsh Government. They do not want to pursue gene editing legislation, and Alistair is absolutely right. This could benefit all of our farmers. This could increase our benefit to the environment, reduce our reliance on fertiliser, which is an eye-watering cost at the moment. So this is a huge win-win, and I really don't understand what the Welsh Government has against innovation, progress, better environmental delivery. And once again, with my 65 miles of a border with England, we're looking across the way at farmers and an environment that are getting a helping hand from their government, and we in Wales are not getting that. We are always being held back by the Welsh Government, but this is a particularly egregious example of how they are standing in the way of farmers and farming businesses and the environment.
But this is the point at which UK government can step in and work with the devolved administrations to unlock these real tangible things, because often it isn't the tangible day-to-day things that are talked about by the Welsh Assembly and the Scottish Government. So Malcolm, I want to touch on transport. How's that relationship going?
Well, transport is devolved, and so the Scottish Government will say that has to be done only by them. But then you have trade routes that go through, that connect Northern Ireland to England through Scotland. And actually, why are we not able to upgrade, for example, A75, when in fact that's what the businesses in Ireland are saying and the business in North of England are saying? And so actually it's a frustration that we say, look, we want to work with you. Yes, it's devolved, but surely in this area there's a wider UK initiative. And I think that is a battle I think that we're winning now. Alistair, that's in your constituency. You know the difficulty of that particular conversation. But the Henry report was actually designed to be a UK-wide. And it's very important to remind all of us in all parts of the United Kingdom that we remain united. We still remain one country. That devolution settlement was meant to have certain devolved areas for the local administrations to run better their local affairs. But for example, we were in Orkney last week. Orkney and Shetland, who are now at the centre of the revolution of wind power, they want to feel that they're at the centre of this debate. And it's a UK debate, isn't it? We didn't feel that was classified as a Scottish matter. It was a UK matter. So I think this is very helpful for us getting the debate back to UK-wide matters.
Completely so. So we've only got a few minutes left. So I'm going to ask you each the same question, one final question.
The tricky question.
The tricky question.
Yeah.
What is your one main hope for the future for Scotland? Alistair.
I was hoping you were going to start with Malcolm. I thought that would have been...
Well, Malcolm, I'll come to you first and let Alistair off.
No. I mean, it's not. I wasn't going to pass the buck. No. I mean, my hope for Scotland is does it have to be levelling up, the answer?
I mean, personally, I prefer it. But given that's my brief bit now.
So I think it's linked with levelling up. Okay, I think it's because I think the thing, I'm going to slightly twist and get my answer in here. The thing that is holding, we've seen the Scottish economy grow slower than the English economy over the last decade. Okay, we know there's uncertainty being caused in Scotland by the SNP perpetually banging on about separation. And we know that creates uncertainty for business, and we also have Scotland as the highest tax part of the United Kingdom. And what I would say is this, is that I want to see us win the case in the Supreme Court, which is coming up on the 10th to 11th of October, which Sturgeon has taken to the Supreme Court. I want to see us win that, win it well, because I believe the 1998 Scotland Act, it was very clear what was reserved and what was devolved. Malcolm's just touched upon that. So I want to see us win that case strongly. Sturgeon said that she intends to have a referendum on October the 19th, 2023. I want to get through that date, and where I'm confident there won't be a referendum. And I want to put the whole matter to be put to bed, and for the SNP to recognise that actually focusing on the economy and the things that people go to bed at night worrying about, that's the levelling up agenda. People don't go to bed and worry about being part of the United Kingdom. They worry about their jobs, or their children's education, or their parents' health, or whatever it may be. Those are the things. They worry about how much money they've got to spend, etc., etc. We know all these. That's what people go to bed worrying about. They don't go to bed worrying about being part of the United Kingdom. And the sooner the SNP realise that and start delivering on the day job, the better. And that's my hope for Scotland.
Absolutely. Quite right. So, Malcolm, we'll stick on Scotland. We'll push for time, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds to sum up your key hope. I imagine it'll be quite similar.
Well, it's very simple for me. Scotland has 8% of the population of the United Kingdom and 33% of the geography. Whatever we do, we have a solemn obligation to always punch above our weight. And we must always do therefore more than 8% whatever we do. So whether it's energy, we're producing 20% probably of UK's energy. We have 20% of food and drink exports in Scotland. We have a very strong position in financial services. We have 15% of university grants in our universities. Let's hammer home the position and allow the Scots to be proud in the Union, because they contribute, they punch above the weight, and the Scots are happiest in the Union when that is recognised.
And Faye, 30 seconds, your key hope for Wales.
Gosh, I'll try and do it quickly. All I want for Wales is fairness. I want to be treated like every other part of the United Kingdom. To give you one example, we have 300 patients in England who have waited over 2 years for their treatment. In Wales, that's 60,000 people. It really is that bad and has been that bad. And friends, you know, I have lived in opposition in Wales for 22 years. And so, you know, I really feel this horrendous sense of injustice about what's going on in Wales, because they are being shortchanged by a Welsh government that only delivers on a very small amount of area for the South Wales valleys and parts of the North East. They couldn't give a monkeys about my part of mid-rural Wales. So all I want is fairness. I think the only way to deliver that is, as I say, two Conservative governments working at either end of the country to deliver for people in Wales. We've been left behind far too long.
Brilliant. Well, there is a call to arms for the elections next year. Well, friends, thank you for your time and for your interest. I think we can all agree that there are huge challenges ahead, but I like to be a bit more optimistic. I like to say that there are huge opportunities ahead. The only way we're going to grasp those opportunities is making sure that the devolved administrations and the UK government are working hand in hand to deliver true levelling up for every part of this great United Kingdom. Thank you very much.
Please welcome the Secretary of State for Education, Kit Malthouse, and his ministerial team.
Are you sitting comfortably? Friends, of all the work we've done together as a party and indeed as a nation over the last 12 years, in my view, the work of which we should be most proud is the work we've done in education. Wherever you look, there is a story of progress and success. We now have, of the 10 million kids who are in school, about 8 million in good or outstanding schools. That's an enormous leap forward over the last 12 years. In literacy, we now have about 82% of kids at 6 reading fluently, rising to 91% at 7. We're at the highest level, at 8th in the World Literacy League table, our highest score that we've ever had. These are enormous steps forward. 10 years ago, a very small number, well, not a very small, about 60% of kids were taking science at GCSE. We're now at 90%. History and geography at below 50%, now at 80%. It's a huge step forward. And at the same time, we've seen the record numbers of disadvantaged kids going through university over the last decade, as well as the incredible work we've done to turbocharge the skills agenda and the FE sector, opening up a whole new area of choice for young people. And so that story of success is something which we as a team want to celebrate with you over the next 2 years, but also reflect on the fact that there's still an awful lot more to do. Right? This huge organisation, this vast franchise, if you like, of UK, of England education, needs constant attention and constant pressure from us as demanding friends to drive it forward. And we've set ourselves 4 key missions. First of all, on schools, we want to be much more assertive about intervention and standards. Looking for excellence in the basics, attendance, behaviour, reading, writing, maths. You give kids those basic qualities and they'll generally fly. And that means that we need to be much more front-footed about talking to schools about what they can achieve. We've seen, as I said, vast progress in lots of schools, but there are still pockets that need our attention. And we need to reflect on the fact that there's nothing quite as persistent as people hanging on to mediocrity. Us finding it, challenging it, working with teachers, bringing all the schools up to the standard of the best will be a key part of our mission. Alongside that, the Prime Minister has asked us to play a big part in the growth agenda. And there are 2 key areas that we can do that. The first is on childcare. At the moment, we have a childcare system which is not really performing either for parents or indeed for providers. And so over the coming weeks, we'll be bringing forward new plans, not to tinker with the system, but to provide really strong support for those parents who want to go to work, want to take more hours, want to return to work, but also critically support for those families that want to make a decision about having children. You'll be hearing more about that in the months to come. And then the second area of the growth plan is, of course, this skills agenda. You know, we've made heavy investment in the apprenticeship scheme. There's still lots to do, and Andrew's going to be talking about that shortly. But driving forward degree apprentices, where we've now seen, you know, professional firms now, lawyers, accountants, seeing the value of this, attracting more and more young people. Landing T-levels, launched successfully recently, now expanding out across the country. And of course, some of the boot camp work we've done to shift people's skills dynamically quite quickly, like we did last summer over HGV, right? Nobody's talking about the HGV license shortage now because we put 5,000 or 6,000 people through the system very quickly to get them into those skills. So there's lots of work that we can do there. And then the 4th area, which Kelly is very focused on, is around child safety and safeguarding. You know, all of us have had to hold back tears when we've read some of those horror stories in the newspapers. Star Hobson, Arthur Lavinia Hughes, right? Really dreadful stories of neglect and horror that some kids are subjected to, that have kind of caused us to question whether the system is working properly. And so a sharp focus on getting into those 80-odd thousand children across the country who are of concern and understanding what more we can do to protect them, we think is absolutely critical. So success, a story of progress, of millions of young people who are going through a much better system than they were over a decade ago, but still an agenda of intensity and work, and in many ways a kind of acceleration of the mission. The transformation mission which was begun 10, 12 years ago, has kind of reached a point at which we need to re-energize it and push it forward. All the thinking about education, training, skills over the last 10 or 15 years has been conservative thinking. All the progress has come from this party and the work we've done with teachers. We've shown the country what can be done. We know what works. Now we need to spread that to every part of the nation, so every child, everywhere, has the best that we can give them. And we'll all be dedicated to that, because at the root of everything that we do, not just in our department, but everything we do at a government, needs to be one simple question that we ask ourselves on a daily basis. And that question is, will the lives of our children be better than our lives? Whether it's housing or health, the fight against crime or the growth plan, right? They need growth, the next generation. If we can answer that question positively, then we will have done our job. And I think over the last decade, in education more than anything else, we can answer that question, will their lives be better than our lives, with an emphatic yes. So I hope those of you in the room who've been governors, who are teachers, who've worked in education with young people, I hope you're proud of that work. I certainly am. And I hope you'll hear from us over the months and weeks to come that we will sing the praises of those who've done this work, of teachers, of parents, of schools, of multi-academy trusts, as we spread that success to every part of the nation. Now, to do that work, I'm very lucky to have a fantastic ministerial team. And we were given a choice today about whether to give a speech or whether to have a conversation. And I thought it was most useful for you to meet this critical team who are going to be part of the story of success in the months to come. So I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their agendas. So first of all, Kelly Tolhurst, we were elected in 2015. Now, you and I have shared a passion for some time, not just about schools, but about child safeguarding. You know, thinking about some of those really awful stories that we've seen and some of the frankly dreadful lives that vulnerable young people live, and about what more we can do there to improve their lives. Now, as you introduce yourself, could you just talk about where you think that could go and what more we could do?
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Secretary of State. And as the Secretary of State has outlined, I'm Kelly Tolhurst. I'm the Member of Parliament for Rochester and Stroud, and absolutely thrilled to be the Minister for the new brief, Schools and Childhood. And this is a new brief that encompasses all elements of a child's childhood, and a real focus, really trying to deliver on our mission to make sure that every child has a fulfilling childhood. Now, before I was elected as a Member of Parliament, I was a chairman of a small charity running a children's centre within my village, actually, where I live, where we were delivering support services to parents for nursery places, parenting courses, cooking courses, things like that. And that's really what started my passion, actually, about how are we able to develop policies and deliver services that really support our families, but also our children. So that's one of the key things that got me started. But also, my sister's a social worker, and I've worked with looked after children, and it's one of the things that has really driven me in politics ever since we got elected, to deliver for those young people actually that don't have a big voice, and that is our looked after children. And too often we are seeing poor outcomes for our looked after children, and that's something for me that is a strong driver to want to be in this role. And as Kit, the Secretary of State, asked the question about, how do we protect children from harm? How do we avoid those absolutely horrific stories that we've all read, and no one can not be touched by that. And we're lucky, under the leadership of our Secretary of State and our Prime Minister, we are really clear that we will be working tirelessly and quickly in order to deliver a response to the 3 big reviews that have taken place. The independent review into children's social care, the national panel review on the awful cases with Arthur and Star, and the CMA report, and we will intend to do that, but also launch an implementation strategy. The one thing that I can achieve while I'm in this role is changing outcomes for young people, particularly looked after children, or particularly those children who are living in families that do need support and who don't get access to it. And I will be working tirelessly under the leadership of our Secretary of State to achieve that.
Brilliant. So a tighter, firmer safety net. Very good. Yeah, no, that's good. A tighter, firmer safety net is exactly what we want. Now, next, our newest recruit, Jonathan Gullis, known to many of you, but a former teacher. Jonathan, as you introduce yourself, do you want to talk a little bit about the work we're going to do with teachers? Obviously, critical partners in success. So many of them now doing a fantastic job out there for kids. You've lived it, you've seen it. Perhaps as you introduce yourself, you could talk a little bit about that agenda.
No, thank you, Kit, and welcome everyone and hello conference. And I've said it so many times, and my colleagues are probably bored of it, but I'm never bored of saying it, that I was proud to spend 8.5 years as a teacher, both in London and in this great city of Birmingham. And what really upset certain political opponents is that I was also a trade union representative for 3.5 of those years as well, working as a shop steward, hearing from our members as a member of the NSUWT. And I wanted to quickly, before I get to what Kid has asked, is to explain why education is so important to me. My mum and dad are the beneficiary of a great education system, but in different ways. It was my mother who got into grammar school off the council estate in London that gave her the opportunity to start her life. It was my dad who accessed the Open University to become first in our family to ever get a degree. My mum and dad then worked incredibly hard and were able to go and achieve success that people in their local area said wasn't possible. But it was education that reminded me time and again that made it possible. But the real reason I fell into teaching, because my dad was a teacher and I was one of those that promised I'd never follow my dad into the profession, but it was working with a young girl called Hannah at Mabel Pritchard School in Oxford whilst I was volunteering in my second and third year at university, a girl with autism. And she was at the local SEND school, and I used to go and help on the school trips as we went out. And to spend nearly 2 years with that young girl, trying to help her with her communication, teaching her very basic skills, but also teaching me about the importance of making sure that every child, regardless of their situation, should be cared for, should be loved, and should be have every opportunity available to them, made me realise that it was teaching that I wanted to go into. And I was delighted to go into the profession, and never did I think, back in 2011 while I was doing my PGCE, that I'd be sat on the stage as the Minister for School Standards. I know maybe at the Institute of Education, whether they're proud to have me as former alumni or not, I'm not sure. But, you know, I was proud to study there and learn a lot, and I had some great tutors, Ben Hammond, Jeremy Hayward, who were excellent at guiding me through that process. And, you know, for me, there's some really key priorities. There is the education investment areas that were announced, those 50+ areas that I know Diana worked incredibly hard on before I entered the department. We've got those 24 priority areas, and it won't shock people that when Diana showed me her spreadsheet of those schools that have got 2 requires improvements or inadequates, that they overlap absolutely with the priority education investment areas. And we're going to go in and rip up. I won't nick Diana's number because I know it's her favourite number to do. But when you hear the number of kids stuck in those schools, it's unacceptable. And we're not going to be ashamed to be interventionists to make sure those children have every opportunity, because every day in a kid's life lost is another opportunity missed. And we can't allow that to happen. The other 2 key areas are that we should be proud as a party on the National Tutoring Programme, and we haven't done enough celebration of that. Over 2 million, what I call opportunities given to kids. And I was out across Sandwell and Wolverhampton only last week, hearing from kids and from teachers who have benefited from this system, enabling those who are most disadvantaged to be able to catch up on their learning. And what was most important to me was kids saying that they had confidence to now sit in the classroom, and when they heard some of those things, whether that be in science, maths or English, taught to them, they felt that they belonged in the classroom. And that's what we've done with the National Tutoring Programme. So despite Labour's moaning and groaning, actually we've invested over £5 billion in catch-up, which is enormous. And then finally, as Kit said about the teaching profession, we've just accredited 179 teacher training providers, and that's because we're unashamedly pro high quality expectations of the teacher training courses that we want, making sure that those teachers not only have a evidence-based led curriculum for them to deliver to their pupils, but the right mentoring that they desperately need. Because I was blessed at Blackfen School for Girls under Pete Patterson and Lola Blatch to get some world-class mentoring that meant that I felt confident entering the workforce. But there'll be stuff that, like the Early Careers Framework now, which is a 2-year course with mentoring and mentors trained as well. We've got these MPQs. I've got 60,000 fully funded MPQs I want every teacher to sign up and take, and they've been, again, robustly looked at, evidence-based and evidence-led to make sure that we have teachers delivering in the classroom what we know works, rather than what pedagogy that some in the past want to live on, this idea that will deliver, even though it continues to fail too many children in our classroom. My role, as Kit said, is to champion teachers. I'll be unashamedly doing that, but I'll also be working with our trade unions to make sure that we are out there looking at how we can improve recruitment and retention, because we want every person to come into this workforce and realise what a great profession it is.
Well done. Very good. Very good, and we're very proud to have you, Jonathan, too. It's great to have you on the team. A longest-standing member of the team, Diana Barron, who's been a member in the department for a bit now, but very focused, as Jonathan said, on this issue of kids in 2RI schools. A falling number, but one that we need to accelerate. Please give us your take on that number.
So lovely to be here with you all, and as I have the enormous privilege of being the Education Minister in the House of Lords. But as the Secretary of State said, one of the things that I'm particularly focused on is those 700,000 children who are in schools that are failing and have failed for some time. And it's a small number in the context of the whole. As the Secretary of State said, our predecessors have done an extraordinary job in turning around our education system. But if you're a child in a secondary school in Knowsley, 50% of kids in Knowsley are in failing schools. That's just not okay. So I'm relentlessly focused on trying to bring that number down in partnership with Jonathan and Kelly. And there's what we want to do, which is bring that number down radically over the next 2 years. There's how we want to do it, which is incentivising quality and educational outcomes for our children. And there's why we want to do it. And as Lord Harris, who set up Harris Academies, said, you can make a mistake with your first job, you can make a mistake with your second job, your third job, there's still a fourth job, but you only get one education. We want our children to have a great education.
Very good. And then, friends, last but not least, Andrea Jenkins, who many of you will know, who's our skills minister, looking at FE and HE. Now, critical to our skills agenda, Andrea, is the participation of employers. Right? We can lead a horse to water, but we can't make it drink. As you introduce yourself, perhaps you could talk about the work you're going to do to bring more businesses in to offer apprenticeships, because we're not short of applicants. Right? Lots of young people want to do them. We now need places.
Completely agree, Secretary of State. I'm very proud to be part of this whole skills agenda, because to me, we are future-proofing our economy. So I think a big focus for me is actually looking at, as you rightly said, Secretary of State, is engagement with employers, and how can we make the process easier for employers? Because especially if you're a one-man band where you wear several hats, it can't be a cumbersome process. It's got to be easy. And on top of that, though, what I'd like to focus on, what are the emerging industries? What are the skills needed for our economy of tomorrow? As a lot of people might know, I'm very pro-Brexit, and I think this is an opportunity. I want to see these homegrown skills. And so, and other things that I really want to focus on are not only is access to education. To me, for too long, the focus has always been on academia. And I think that, you know, we've got to be proud of our academia, the universities. You know, we have some of the greatest universities in this world, and part of my brief is international education. And I'll certainly be selling, you know, this across the globe. But the other aspect, I think we need to actually ensure that not only at teacher level, at parent level, throughout the education landscape, that vocational qualifications and technical qualifications qualifications are seen as equally as important. So raising that esteem, I think, is definitely going to be a focus. And another thing we should be proud of is, look, the amount of apprenticeships we've had is amazing. I was speaking to somebody who'd worked in the sector for over 30 years, and she told me that under Brown's government, she'd really tried to push him to actually mention apprenticeships once per year. And look at us where we're at now. It's amazing. We've currently got 300,000 apprenticeships on the go at the moment. But on top of that, it's the T-levels. I mean, I went to the Northwest and on T-level results day, and I wish I could bottle that energy I saw there. Students were coming up to me and saying it's changed their lives. You know, getting that work experience is a great social mobility manoeuvre. You know, not everybody, it's easy for middle-class families to actually get the work experience, get the internships in MPs' offices, but working-class backgrounds, you know, like myself, like many on this panel, it's much harder to have those opportunities. So to actually have the work experience element that apprenticeships and T-levels offer on the CV, we're really giving a better start to those young people. And finally, we've got one person clapping. Oh, thank you. And finally, Secretary of State, I'm immensely proud of what we're bringing in 2025. It's a lifelong learning entitlement. So if you think learning is not all about school leavers, and I think this is going to be so important that we're really changing the way the landscape of education is funded. And this is really going to help those people who look after loved ones, people who have been out of the jobs market or was never trained before. It gives them some great opportunities and flexibility in the learning system. So I think that's an incredibly exciting place to be.
Brilliant. Well, friends, the flashing number is telling me that we're out of time, but I hope that you've got a sense of the enthusiasm and commitment from the team, because as Jonathan said, we are all appraised of the fact that every day counts. Those of us who've been lucky enough to have children will know that they don't hang about. They're gone in a flash. They grow up in a blink, and that just a week, a day, a month of substandard, missed education, whether it's in college, university, or right through the school system, can have a huge impact on their life chances. We've brought about, over the last decade, enormous success, a huge leap forward. We recognize that the work we're doing is building on that success. But now we need to be impatient and demanding on behalf of all those kids that we're looking after, making sure that they get the best that they can, the best foundation they can, to build a really fantastic life for themselves in our wonderful country. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you.
Please welcome the Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice, Brandon Lewis.
Conference, it is brilliant to be back with you here in Birmingham. It's always a time that I enjoy and one that I look forward to, as I know so many of you do. It's a time for us to come together as one Conservative family to reaffirm our common cause. And I'm joined today by my brilliant new ministerial team who are here with us as well. Rachel McLean, Mike Freer, Rob Butler, Gareth Johnson, and our PPSs, Aaron Bell and Gareth Bacon, working alongside me with our Lords Minister, Lord Bellamy. And thank you to all of them for being here and the great work they are already doing in the Ministry of Justice. Now, Conference, our party has a long and proud history. And it's a party that has had that pride around our determination to deliver freedom and opportunity. We have an unwavering belief in integrity and individualism, supported by a robust and unapologetic approach to law and order, public safety, and sound stewardship of the economy. Britain is known as a bastion of law and order, and it's why people invest here as well. Safety and security for ourselves, for our families, at home, in our neighbourhoods, in our schools and our shops, is the bedrock that allows economic growth to flourish. Public safety means peace of mind. It means safer streets and healthier communities. It means local investment and economic opportunity. It's these priorities of safety, of security, and of stability for everyone, in every community, in every corner of our country, that we as Conservatives hold dear. At the forefront of that effort are some true hidden heroes. They are the hidden heroes of our society, many of whom are the backbone of our criminal justice system. Our prison and probation staff. They work hard, so hard, every single day to keep the public safe, to keep us all safe from the most serious and prolific offenders in society. Our dedicated courts and tribunal staff who enable justice to be done in courtrooms across the length and breadth of our country join that team. And it's not just the system that matters, it's the people. Now, this has been a tough time for our country, and the criminal justice system is no different. So we cannot shy away from that. We have to face down those difficulties so that we can do what we are always focused on doing. Guarantee victims and survivors the access to justice that they deserve. And as your Lord Chancellor and Justice Secretary, I can promise you I will do just that. Now, like many of our public services, the judicial system was hit hard by the pandemic. Our courts were closed and justice was therefore delayed and a backlog of cases built up. Now, we've got through the pandemic. Now, I'm determined that we get through those backlogs. I want to make sure that everyone has swift access to justice, whoever they are and wherever they are from. Our justice system should never be, we will not let it be, a lottery. And that's why I've already taken action to address those backlogs. Now, while there are many challenges that have contributed to that backlog, the key to unlocking our clogged up courts will be ending the barrister strike over legal aid fees. That strike action has had a devastating impact on victims, and justice has been delayed in too many cases. That's why in my first few days as Lord Chancellor, I met the Criminal Bar Association. And last week, we proposed a comprehensive new package, one that I hope will bring a swift end to the strike. We have to end the revolving door of industrial action, ending a cycle of brinkmanship. We have to ensure, all of us, that we are putting the criminal justice system on a more sustainable footing for the long term. We owe that to victims. Now, that will also allow cases to be heard more quickly for the benefit of all. including victims of some of the most horrific crimes like rape and serious sexual violence. We are overhauling the way that rape and sexual abuse victims are supported through the whole criminal justice system so that more cases can come to court and more predators are put behind bars. At conference, we have made some good progress on this. Convictions are up by 2/3 on 2020, and they're up by a quarter compared to before the pandemic hit. But I make no bones about it, we have a lot more to do. I'm determined that we do that. And the government has set out some clear actions already for the police, prosecutors, and our courts to make sure that more rapists are convicted and are put away. We have invested significantly in support for victims and survivors as well, meaning that more support is there for victims when they first report a crime and more support when their case gets to court. We want to reduce the trauma that's involved in the trial process and improve the quality and reliability of the evidence that courts see as a result of that. For example, victims of rape and serious sexual offences can now pre-record their evidence ahead of trial, avoiding that additional trauma of testifying in a courtroom in front of your accused attacker. We are also piloting the use of independent advisors to guide people through what can be a very difficult and daunting process. And we're boosting the accessibility of support with a new 24/7 rape and sexual abuse support helpline, so that people can access the help they need whenever and wherever they need it. But conference, we all know that stamping out violence against women and girls does not, cannot, it must not end just at the prison gates. It cannot be right that transgender prisoners, when convicted of serious sexual offences or those who have not had reassignment surgery, are housed in a general women's estate. Conference, this will end. We have a duty of care to all those behind bars. One case of a sex attack or inappropriate relationship formed with a female prisoner by a transgender inmate is one too many, and we've had too many in recent years. Our management of trans prisoners will rely not just on common sense, but we will also work on capacity. If we need to expand our use of the specialist areas for trans prisoners to further protect women in prison, then we will do that. Indeed, as a government, we are committed to creating 20,000 new prison places across the whole of the system by the middle of this decade. And we'll deliver that as well, because prison must be about the punishment of the criminal and protection of the innocent first and foremost. Depriving people who have broken our laws of their liberties to guarantee the rest of us our cherished freedoms is part of what prison is there for. And thanks to our manifesto commitment to recruit 20,000 more police officers, we will be catching and punishing more criminals and preventing crime as we do it. I'm determined to ensure that our prisons keep up with that. But there is more that we need to do to divert people away from prison and away from a life of crime in the first place. We know that hardened career criminals are not born. Sadly, they're made. We will avoid putting some of those convicted of more low-level offences onto that conveyor belt by expanding our world-leading GPS tagging project for neighbourhood crime, targeted at burglars, robbers and thieves who can be a scourge of our communities and our neighbourhoods. This compulsory electronic monitoring and close supervision will mean that police and our probation officers are able to keep an even closer eye on them when they leave prison. Their whereabouts will be known 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with the ability to impose robust restrictions or, where necessary, effective house arrest. We will maximise our use of new technology like the GPS tracking to reduce crime and protect the public from those neighbourhood thugs who too often blight our communities. In doing so, we will reduce crime and play our part in deterring and ending reoffending for more people. These are common sense solutions to sadly all too common problems. This government will also ensure that the very worst offenders are locked up for longer. And our new prison places will be vital in helping us do just that and give a clear message to criminals in society that they will be punished, they will serve time, and our prisons will be there to house them. Those who commit the most heinous crimes and who commit those in a way that continue to be a threat, all of them must be punished, and the public need to know that they will be protected from them. The guarantee of public protection must be the overriding factor in our parole decisions as well, so that we can secure the rightful confidence of both the victims and the public. Now, to do that, I will make sure that the parole board is more accountable and more transparent about the decisions that are made. Just this week, we are due to have the first ever public parole hearing after we reformed the process earlier this year. And that is a big and a good positive step forward. These reforms to the parole process will all play their part in boosting public protection and confidence, improving transparency and accountability, better supporting the victims of some of the country's most horrendous crimes. Better supporting victims and survivors must also mean reducing reoffending, more effective rehabilitation. Prisoners need to ensure that we are making sure that they appreciate the value of hard work and personal responsibility to have a chance to rebuild their lives and play their part in society when they leave prison. That means that those who have been in prison pay back into their communities and the country's coffers. It's based on the simple principle of fairness, something we can all embrace. And we will do our part. We will equip prisoners with the training and the skills they need to become active participants in the jobs market. We are and have just introduced new legislation to allow prisoners to take up apprenticeships whilst behind bars for the first time, so that those prisoners can help build communities whilst rebuilding their own lives. Conference, these apprenticeships will give them the skills that they need to get onto the jobs market, to get jobs on release and to pay their own way. Now, we know across our economy that we cannot tax our way to growth. We have to make sure that we are creating the conditions for the economy to thrive. Our legal services industry is full of opportunities for growth. It is already worth a positive surplus of £29 billion to the UK economy. It employs over 350,000 people, and it is the foundation for over £250 billion worth of international mergers and acquisitions. Thanks to our values, our belief in the rule of law, our traditions and our history, we are the world's council and the world's courtroom. English law is recognised around the globe. And I will work to promote our exceptional legal services industry to the world and to see it recognised as part of our new post-Brexit free trade agreements. The critical importance of our whole justice system to our country cannot be overstated. It underpins all that we do, all that we achieve, all that we believe in. It impacts everyone, everywhere. I take that responsibility to safeguard and sustain that very seriously, because I know it means peace of mind for all of us and the people we serve. It defines our quality of life. Our justice system is the foundation of what makes Britain great, and it is the envy of the world. For Great Britain is truly great when we have safe streets, healthy neighbourhoods, and thriving communities. That is what we as Conservatives believe in. It's what we strive for. And Conference, is what this Conservative government will deliver. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Home Secretary, Suella Baverman.
It's such a privilege to be here. Being Home Secretary is not just a tremendous honour. Keeping the British people safe and securing our borders are the highest duties of state. Our Prime Minister understands those duties, and so do I. We stand for the law-abiding majority of Britons. And in doing so, I draw on a long tradition of Conservative Home Secretaries who were willing to challenge failing orthodoxy. They refused to accept defeat. Michael Howard, on his first day as Home Secretary, was told that there was nothing that he could do about the inevitable rise of crime. He disagreed, and crime fell dramatically. They said that Theresa May couldn't deport Abu Qatada, the Islamist extremist. But, and despite setbacks along the way, she made it happen. Priti Patel negotiated a groundbreaking deal with our partners in Rwanda to bring forward a new solution for the challenge of illegal migration, providing protection in Rwanda for those that need it, whilst breaking the business model of people smugglers. I'm grateful to Priti and Boris for the foundations that they laid. Serious violent crime has fallen, as has overall crime, excluding fraud and online theft. And we are well on the way to 20,000 additional police officers. But a Home Secretary can never be complacent, and some things still need fixing. I'm pleased to be working with a brilliant team of ministers who I'm so pleased to see with us today. Tom Tugendhat, Tom Pursglove, Jeremy Quinn, Mims Davies, and Lord Andrew Sharp, supported by our excellent PPSs, Gareth Davies and Sean Bailey. They all bring talent and expertise to the Home Office. Now, the Prime Minister and I want to see homicide, serious violence and neighbourhood crime fall by 20%. Some of our most committed and courageous people serve in the police. In Belfast, absolutely. Yes. In Belfast last week, I joined police leaders to pay tribute to those officers who have died in action. Their ultimate sacrifice is one for which we owe a huge debt of gratitude. So yes, I'm immensely proud of our police. Now, many on the left, they want to defund the police. Well, I say to the militants, I say to the anarchists and the extremists, no, I will always back our police, men and women. That's what being on the side of the law-abiding majority means. But we also need to be frank when things go wrong. Some police officers have fallen devastatingly short of the standards expected. We need to get back to common sense policing, empowering the police to tackle the issues facing the public, not policing pronouns on Twitter or non-crime not policing non-crime hate incidents. That's why I'm very pleased to see that Greater Manchester Police, Hampshire, Bedfordshire, Northamptonshire and the Metropolitan Police have all promised now to visit the scene of every burglary. But the law-abiding majority expect every force to investigate every neighbourhood crime, and so do I. Drugs, car theft, vandalism, and antisocial behaviour cannot be ignored. Perhaps the most unsettling and unspeakable crime of all is rape. Now, as an MP and as the Attorney General, I've already seen firsthand how the system needs to do better. I can't change things overnight, but I will not accept the status quo. Now, policing is a public service and must be accountable to you, the public. That's why it's right that we publish league tables that show how well every force in England and Wales is doing in their fight against crime. You all have the right to know, and greater transparency will drive up standards. Now, the modern world inevitably brings new challenges. Our National Security Bill will ensure that law enforcement and intelligence agencies have the tools that they need to stay ahead of the country's ever more sophisticated adversaries. Yet everything starts from getting the basics right. We need common sense policing, unashamedly, unapologetically, on the side of the law-abiding majority. And that means that the mob needs to be stopped. The police must have all the powers that they need to stop the protesters who use guerrilla tactics and bring chaos and misery to the law-abiding majority. It's not a human right to vandalise property. It's not my freedom of expression to protest violently. No, you can't just start a riot or glue yourself to the roads and get away with it. Yes, friends, as Attorney General, I had to go to court to get some of these simple truths established. The judges agreed with me last week in the Court of Appeal in the Colston statue case. And that's why our Public Order Bill will empower our police to stop this nuisance. So whether you're Just Stop Oil or Insulate Britain or Extinction Rebellion, you cross a line when you break the law, and that's why we'll keep putting you behind bars. Now, it's very easy to say that the culture wars are a distraction. But make no mistake, the left are attacking our profound, elemental values, wanting to replace them with the poison of identity politics. And when this poison seeps into the public sphere, it distracts our public servants from doing their real job. That philosophy dominates the Labour Party, whatever Sir Keir Starmer pretends. And that's why it's not only wrong for the police to take the knee, it is wrong for them to join in with political demonstrations. It is wrong for biologically male police officers to strip search female suspects. And it's not just that pandering to identity politics is a huge waste of time. They need to stick to catching the bad guys. Now, those who dismiss political correctness as a conservative obsession, I say this. I say visit Rochdale, visit Telford. The grooming gang scandal is a stain on this country, and it's what happens when political correctness becomes more important than criminal justice. More PCs, less PC. Now, my other mission is to control our borders. Firstly, legal migration. Now, I backed Brexit because I wanted Britain to have control over our migration and to cut overall numbers. Brexit was meant to give us a say on how we determine our own migration policy. We should use our newfound control to deliver the kind of migration that grows our economy. For example, that helps projects that have stalled or builds friendships and relationships with our allies. But the truth is, parts of our system aren't delivering. We need to end the abuse of the rules, and we need to cut down on those numbers that aren't meeting the needs of our economy. And we mustn't forget how to do things for ourselves. There is absolutely no reason why we can't train up enough of our own HGV drivers or butchers or fruit pickers. The way we build a high-skilled, high-wage economy is by encouraging business to invest in capital and domestic labour, not relying wholly on low-skilled foreign workers. Now, this just isn't just about policy or economics for me. It's intensely personal. My parents came to this country in the 1960s from Kenya and Mauritius. They loved Britain from afar as children of the Commonwealth. It was Britain that offered them security and opportunity as young adults. I'm not embarrassed to say that I love Britain. No Conservative is. It's not racist for anyone, ethnic minority or otherwise, to want to control our borders. It's not bigoted to say that we have too many asylum seekers who are abusing the system. It's not xenophobic to say that mass and rapid migration places pressure on housing, public services, and community relations. I reject the left's argument that it is hypocritical for someone from an ethnic minority to tell these truths. My parents came here through legal and controlled migration. They spoke the language. They threw themselves into the community. They embraced British values. When they arrived, they signed up to be part of our shared project, because the United Kingdom meant something distinct. Integration was part of the quid pro quo. Now, that didn't mean abandoning their heritage, but it did mean adopting British identity, an identity of which we should all be proud. This is the best place on earth to come and live in, but I fear that we are losing sight of the core values and the culture that made it so. The unexamined drive towards multiculturalism as an end in itself, combined with the corrosive aspects of identity politics, has led us astray. I saw this when I went to Leicester recently, a melting pot of cultures and a beacon of religious harmony. But even there, riots and civil disorder have taken place because of failures to integrate large numbers of newcomers. Such conflict has no place in the UK. Or when we look at the Prevent scheme, we see how cultural tensions within communities are not being handled well enough. The murderer of our much-missed dear friend, Sir David Amess, had been referred to Prevent, but it couldn't stop him. We cannot, as a people, be cowed into fear by vocal minorities who attempt to undermine our common sense instincts. And as Home Secretary, I will make sure that Prevent is fit for purpose. The law-abiding majority deserve nothing less. And lastly, we've got to stop the boats crossing the Channel. This has gone on for far too long. But I have to be straight with you. There are no quick fixes, and the problem is chronic. Organised criminal gangs are selling a lie to thousands of people. Many are drowning in the Channel. Many are leaving a safe country like France and abusing our asylum system. So what's our plan? Firstly, our work with the French has prevented about half of all the crossings. Now, I know that that alone will not work. So I will work closely with the French to get more out of our partnership, both on the French coastline and further upstream against the organised criminal gangs. Secondly, we need to find a way to make the Rwanda scheme work. Thirdly, we need to do more to get asylum seekers out of hotels, currently costing the British taxpayer £5 million a day. And fourth, we cannot allow a foreign court to undermine the sovereignty of our borders. For a few months ago, the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg did just that. By a closed process with an unnamed judge and without any representation by the UK, a European court overrode our Supreme Court. And as a result, our first flight to Rwanda was grounded. We need to take back control. But friends, I need to be honest with you. The Strasbourg court is not the only problem. Now, everyone agrees that we must fight the evil of modern slavery. I'm immensely proud of this country's global leadership in protecting genuine victims. But the hard truth is that our modern slavery laws are being abused by people gaming the system. We've seen a 450% increase in modern slavery claims since 2014. Today, the largest group of small boats migrants are from Albania, a safe country. Many of them claim to be trafficked as modern slaves. That's despite them having paid thousands of pounds to come here or having willingly taken a dangerous journey on the Channel. The truth is that many of them are not modern slaves, and their claims of being trafficked are lies. And it's not just illegal migrants. Since entering the Home Office, I have seen egregious examples of convicted paedophiles and rapists trying to game the system, making last-minute claims of modern slavery to block their removal from the country. Some have even gone on to commit further crimes in the interim. In one case, a convicted sex offender from South Africa had spent a year in prison. He was about to be deported from the United Kingdom, and lo and behold, he made a claim of modern slavery. Our removal was stalled, and in this time, he went on to commit a further rape. He's now behind bars, but when he's released, well, it's all so terribly predictable. In another case, a paedophile from Pakistan received 10 years in prison, but at the end of his prison sentence, he put in a spurious claim to be a modern slave. And even when he got through that process, he made a second claim, which blocked his removal. We simply cannot go on like this. We need to make sure that our system strikes the right balance. Our laws need to be resilient against abuse, whilst at the same time ensuring that we help those in genuine need. We've got a proud history of offering sanctuary to those in need, from supporting the thousands of BNOs fleeing persecution in Hong Kong, to welcoming nearly 20,000 Afghan nationals fleeing war and terror, to offering immediate refuge to thousands of Ukrainians fleeing Putin's barbarism. The UK and this Conservative government has always been there to hold out the hand of hope to those who need it most. But the law simply isn't working. It isn't working in the interests of the British people or people who need our help the most. Our laws are being abused. Abused by people smugglers and criminals peddling false promises. Abused by people making multiple, meritless and last-minute claims. Abused by tactics from specialist, small boat-chasing law firms. This cannot continue. So, Conference, I will commit to you today that I will look to bring forward legislation to make it clear that the only route to the United Kingdom is through a safe and legal route. And that's so that we can help support those who need our help the most, including women and girls. So if you deliberately enter the United Kingdom illegally from a safe country, you should be swiftly returned to your home country or relocated to Rwanda. That is where your asylum claim will be considered. UK policy on illegal migration should not be derailed by abuse of our modern slavery laws, Labour's Human Rights Act, or orders of the Strasbourg Court. And we will always, of course, work within the bounds of international law, but we cannot allow this abuse of our system to continue. And of course, at the same time, we need to stamp out illegal working practices. We already have some of the toughest penalties for those not playing by our rules, but we will redouble our efforts to go after them. But I need to be straight with you, conference. This will not be easy. I cannot promise you a solution immediately. We've all heard pledges and promises, but this problem is complex and entrenched. And there are many forces working against us. The Labour Party will try to stop this. The Lib Dem will go bananas. The Guardian will have a meltdown. As for the lawyers, don't get me started on the lawyers. And I'm a recovering lawyer. But what I can pledge to you is my total and undeniable and unfettered and unconditional commitment to doing whatever it takes. And despite those obstacles, I won't give up on you, and I won't give up on the British people. Very kind of you, I hadn't actually finished. My goodness. Now, if I don't get a standing ovation at the end, what do I make of that? Ladies and gentlemen, friends, conference, the time for words is over. Now is the time for action. It's time to put the will of the hard-working, patriotic majority at the heart of all we do. It's time for the police to stop virtue signalling and start catching robbers and burglars. It's time to tackle the small boats, no ifs, no buts. Friends, it's time for common sense. I stand ready to serve you. I stand ready to deliver. The time is ours. The time is now. Thank you, conference.
Please welcome the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly.
Thank you, thank you. A little bit of reshuffling going on there. Cool. Oh, look, thank you, conference. It's great to be back together. Great to be back as a party, as a family. And I want to say a big thank you to Jake Berry, our chairman, because organising a conference is a mammoth undertaking. And a big thank you to our staff, our volunteers, and of course a huge thank you to you, our party members. I loved being party chairman. I really did. I got a chance to work with you all, I got a chance to work with Ben, my co-chairman, and I got to work alongside Boris. And if I remember rightly, we did okay, didn't we? We got an 80-seat majority. We had a great team of MPs elected from all over our country, and with Boris's leadership, we delivered Brexit. He got us through COVID. And of course, he led the world in our support for Ukraine. It's a legacy that he should be proud of, and I was proud to serve under him. And it's a legacy that I know Liz Truss will build upon. And I've seen her take bold action when she was Foreign Secretary. Her steadfast support for Ukraine and the way she stood up to Russia. Her passion. Her passion for the defence of our union and her determination to promote democracy and freedom around the world. And as Prime Minister, she is being bold now, helping with energy bills, ensuring that you can see a doctor promptly, reducing the taxes paid by ordinary, hard-working people across the country. I backed her from the start, and I know that I made the right choice. I am the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I have to confess, it still sounds a little strange coming out of my mouth, but it is an honour, a genuine honour, to be the face and voice of our country overseas. Okay, yeah, why not? I'm the UK's sales guy. And I like to think I'm pretty good at sales. I mean, I hope so. For most of my adult life, that's what paid the bills. But I know that however good a salesperson I aspire to be, the greatest salesperson that the UK ever had was Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth. She was our greatest diplomat, our greatest advocate, our greatest champion. She genuinely was Elizabeth the Great. And I've now also had the honour of meeting King Charles. And I know he will work tirelessly to continue the work that she did and be our new great ambassador. During the funeral week of Her late Majesty, I was reminded of the standing that our country has in the world. And when I travel on behalf of our country, I'm lucky enough to see us, to see the UK as others see us. And I can tell you, the view of here from over there is really, really good. It's not a terribly fashionable thing to be proud of your country, but I am, so sue me. My mother chose to make this country her home. She was a young woman from Sierra Leone, who adored this country then just as I adore this country now. Indeed, I am from immigrant stock on both sides of my family. As I say, my mother came here from Sierra Leone in 1966, and my dad's family came here from Normandy in 1066. Look, there will always be people that talk down our country. They will belittle our achievements. They will underestimate our standing. Those self-loathing keyboard warriors who hate our country's every success and pray for bad news. Those are the kind of people who aren't happy until they're unhappy. They're the kind of people who want to stand on the sidelines, never contributing, only moaning and bleating. But that isn't us. That isn't this party. That isn't this government. That isn't this country. We aren't commentators watching on the sidelines saying, oh, I wouldn't have done it like that. We are players on the pitch. We make a difference. We promote our values. We compete on the world stage for the things that we know to be right. We believe in freedom. We believe in the rule of law. And we believe that an aggressor cannot invade its neighbour with impunity. And that conference is why we stand shoulder to shoulder with those brave Ukrainians defending their homeland. And Britain has to have the strategic endurance to see this through until their victory. Back in February this year, at the United Nations, I said that if Putin was foolish enough to attempt to invade Ukraine, the Ukrainians would defend their country ferociously. And they have done just that. Their bravery and passion have been amplified by the arms and the training that the UK has supplied. And we will support them until this war is won. We will support them until their territorial integrity is restored. And we will support them until the last Russian tank is dragged away by the last Ukrainian tractor. We need to have the strategic endurance to see this through to the end. Because if we don't, we send a message to every potential aggressor that our resolve is fragile. And we cannot, we must not, we will not send that message out into the world. And if you are listening to this speech, Mr. Putin, or Mr. Lavrov, let me be clear. We will never recognize the annexation of Luhansk, or Donetsk, or Kherson, or Zaporizhzhia, or Crimea. They are Ukraine. And when Ukraine has won this war, and they will, Then we will support them as they rebuild their homes, rebuild their economy, and rebuild their society. We will work with our friends and allies around the world to hold the perpetrators to account, to punish those who use rape as a weapon of war, to punish those who knowingly target civilian infrastructure, and to punish those who murder women and children. And we will not do this alone. We are a member of many international groups: the Commonwealth, NATO, the UN Security Council, AUKUS, the G7, the G20. And I intend to build more alliances, more friendships, more partnerships around the globe. That's why we have ambassadors and high commissioners and diplomats in hundreds of locations. It's why I and my fantastic team of ministers travel the world. Trust me, it isn't to pick up those giant Toblerones. Although I do like those giant Toblerones. Look, when there is a war, our work on the international stage is visible and it's obvious. Building coalitions of condemnation at the United Nations, for example. Coordinating sanctions against those who facilitate the war. Working to ensure that the exports of food and fertilizer from those Black Sea ports can continue. But much of what the FCDO does is less visible, but no less important. I've just returned from a series of meetings in East and Southeast Asia. I paid my respects at the funeral of Japan's former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Then I went to the Republic of Korea and then to Singapore. In each country, I met with senior ministers. I met with members of the international business community. I set out the detail of the UK's Indo-Pacific tilt. The Indo-Pacific is a part of the world which is growing fast. And through trade agreements, cooperation agreements, and our ASEAN dialogue partner status, we are shrinking the distance between us. I spoke about the opportunities that are available to us all. And of course, I spoke about the role that China plays in the region and around the globe. I made our position clear that China could and should take a different path, that it should adhere to the rules and norms of the international community, and it should stop persecuting its people at home, and it should stop sanctioning my friends and colleagues in the UK Parliament. And whilst I was on the other side of the world, FCDO ministers were in the USA, in European capitals, in Africa. And a number of my ministers are overseas as I speak. Because we have to invest in our international partnerships. Patient but effective diplomacy. We invest time. We invest energy. And, yes, we invest money. Because that's how we generate influence on the world stage. And that's how we drive improvements in the lives of people overseas and how we improve the lives of people here in the UK. The development money that we spend, our official development assistance, or ODA, it helps women and children who have been brutalised by conflict. It helps prevent starvation. We use our expertise in financial services through the British investment partnerships to amplify the money that we provide, to part fund green energy projects, for example, or to increase trade, or to stimulate economic growth in some of the least developed countries in the world. We don't just stand idly by and watch problems happen. We step in to improve things. We're not passive, but we're active. It's the right thing to do. It helps people that need our help, but it also helps people here at home in the UK. Why? Because safe, secure and prosperous countries don't generate refugees or hundreds of thousands of migrants. Safe, secure and prosperous countries don't export terrorism. Safe, secure and prosperous countries are good trade partners for us. So obviously, we want to see more safe, secure and prosperous countries. That is the active role our ODA, our Official Development Assistance, plays. But just because we look to build prosperity in distant places, we mustn't forget the need to build prosperity closer to home. A good diplomatic and economic relationship with the EU and its member states is good for all of us. And we've worked closely on our sanctions packages against Russia and those Russians that have enabled the war in Ukraine. And I want to see more cooperation across the Channel and across the Irish Sea. And addressing the current problems with the Northern Ireland Protocol is key to doing that. And I want to ensure that we restore the integrity of the UK internal market. I want to protect north-south trade, but I also want to restore the balance of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, which has been disrupted by the protocol. I want to see all the communities in Northern Ireland represented again at the Stormont Executive, so that devolved government can be properly re-established. And I will work hard to get that done. Last week, I spoke to the EU's lead negotiator, Vice President Maros Sefcovic, and we agreed on our desire to reach a solution that works for all parts of the UK, especially the people of Northern Ireland. So we have the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill working its way through Parliament, and in the meantime, we continue to pursue a negotiated settlement which respects the constitutional integrity of the United Kingdom and our single market, and supports the institutions of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. As I've discussed, my fantastic team of ministers, Vicky Ford, Jessie Norman, Leo Doherty, Zach Goldsmith, Tariq Ahmed, Gillian Keegan, well, we've got plenty to keep us busy. But it is a job worth doing. Promoting global Britain on the world stage. And I know that I speak on behalf of all the ministers and all the diplomats and all the civil servants in the FCDO when I say it is an honour to represent the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland on the world stage, because this is a great country I am proud of, a country I love. Thank you.